Hi, welcome to a demonstration of bouncing stems for a library music project and the cut downs. So if we have a look at this, if I can zoom into, this is my project. We have, okay, I'm changing the zoom level. So we've got the main, which is all the music here, and everything is routed through, as you can see down here, say the drums are routed to the drums, bass to the bass, guitars, etc. I've sent them to the main window, and I have then created with the pencil tool. I've created some regions, and these are what the stems are going to be. So we have the project up here that I've written, and these are the stems. What I've done with this is the project, in the marker window, I've created a marker that is, if I take that off loop, I've created a marker which is actually the length of the project plus a tiny bit. Now if I press Alt Command and up, then it selects exactly what that is. So I can make a bounce of the project, then I can make a bounce minus the melodies when I want to do the underscore, and I can do a bounce, then I can actually do the stems, but I'll demonstrate that. And obviously here, so I've done a copy. The way I do this, I select that, copy, where is it? Copy section between locators, then I go insert section at playhead, then I edit it and make the 60, then I do the same and make the this, which is actually the 30, and I've labelled them so I can see them not very well there, 60, 30, and the sting, which are both 8 seconds. So you can make the marker 8 seconds long, and then you know that you're working within it. And you have to allow for kind of like a little bit of fade when the last hit point is. It's all kind of library thing. So each one of these things, I guess, is a kind of separate tutorial or a separate subject. But what I'm just going to do, this is, I've got it all set up, and I'm just going to create the bouncing. Now I've done this already to a folder. The reason I'm recording this, I've done this all, but I've decided that the fade out on this, it wasn't right, so I came back on the entire project. I'm going to rebounce it, just because each one of these, I felt the fade out could be slightly different on one note. I went into Melodyne and actually boosted it, and Melodyne Studio is absolutely incredible for that kind of stuff. Anyway, so let's go back to where we are. We are now going to, so imagine that's not clicked. So we go to the main, we do Alt Command and up. And now we are selecting what the main is. We make sure there are no processing. There's no processing on the main bus, and we make sure it's coming in around. Should be around minus 6 dB at peaking. This allows the mastering engineer to actually do something to the mix. And we click bounce. It's going to be PCM 24-bit 48 is what is required for the label that I do the stuff for. Offline is fine, include tempo information, it can or can't, I guess. Make sure the real important thing is normalize is off. So I don't add it to the project music, I'm just going to bounce it. So it's going to go to, now you make a folder, and this is where I'm going to bounce it. Now this is actually a folder of what I've previously done, so it's going to help me with the naming. But I'm going to call this, you have all your precursor of the name, but you call it, I'd suggest you give it all this kind of name, and at the end you go main, because we're going to bounce the main. So let us click that. It's going to go in here and click bounce. And now it is doing an offline bounce. Again, everything I've read is that offline is the same quality or even better than do an online bounce. But there are some things you might want to kind of bounce in place just to ensure the effects remain. If there's strings that are doing something strange, you might want to just bounce it in place so you've got the audio file So nothing strange can happen in the. I have had weird things happen in the bounce, but as a rule, it's okay. So that is bounce. So that is the main. Now then the underscore, because I've got the melodies, what I've done is separated out and everything that goes through to the melodies. I'm going to mute the melodies, and I'm just going to go bounce again. Everything is still the same. I go to new folder, and I go and I underscore. So it's the same as here, but I'm going to call it 2 underscore. And this helps is if you're sending it through to a mix engineer, it's kind of sequentially named, so he could actually lay these stems out on a mix, and he'd know exactly what it is. So it's important to do that. So that's named that, and we are now bouncing the underscore, which is basically any kind of without the melodies. Melodies are anything that's going to distract a listener. So when the editors use it in the piece in some film, then if there's little things sticking out, you want to kind of put those on the melodies. You can also do alts if you feel there's like if you want to do one without kind of beats and things like that. That's an alt, whereas this is an underscore. That's kind of the way I do it, and it kind of works. So let's click that off again, and this is an important thing. We are going to select. These are selecting the subs that everything is sent to a different sub, including the reverbs. I've got separate reverbs, say guitar reverb you have, but that goes back to the sub. So each sub is individual, when all of these should add up to the final mix, which is why I don't have reverbs floating around, because that wouldn't necessarily be included. Again, that kind of works for me. So we know it's still the same selector. I could click off it, and if I clicked off that, and I click Alt Command and up, I know it's selecting exactly what the main mix is. So when the main and the underscore needs to be the same length as the stems. These put together equal the main and the underscore, which is why you make sure it's exactly the same length. It's not like the 60s, 30s stings, which you can edit down because they're not kind of in correlation to anything, apart from the fact they have to be that long. So let's go up to File, Export, 6 tracks as audio files. Here we go, and I'm going to go into my deliveries. It's going to be in Heartlove is the one I'm doing it in. Okay, so this is the folder that's going to go into. And this takes a little bit, you make sure you're exporting the cycle range only, because you don't want any tail, any length or anything. WAV or WAV is the format, 24-bit. Include tempo is fine. Normalize, you want to turn off. You don't want the files to be normalized, because that will mess up the mix. You want everything to be exactly the same as is. Now what I've done is you can drag things in from here. So I've given every name is going to be like the label, my name, and the album, and then project name. That will be your song name, which is good to call it. And of course, this is the 4th song of the album, so that's project name. Stem, that's defining that this is a stem that the mix engineer is going to receive. It's not going to be the main or the underscore. And then the track name, that's why I name over here the tracks specifically like that. So that's great, and it's going to come in here. So I click Export. This is the bit that takes some time. So I have a Rubik's Cube, which I attempt to solve in the whole time that it takes to bounce. This isn't a particularly complicated project. I mean, I sometimes have loads and loads and loads of tracks, way too many. I totally complicate it. So But this bit can this is because it's creating one, two, three. It's creating 6 of these tracks individually, and it's bouncing it down. So it is a bit kind of processor heavy. I mean, I've got other tracks. I've done other tracks which I have Melodyne on, or Melodyne on say about 20 tracks of Melodyne, and then using some of the complete the cello and violin things and pianos, they use a massive amount of processing power, so they have to kind of recreate it. But that's another reason why sometimes you might bounce it. You see here I bounced the piano. Bouncing a piano actually for the stems, for the cut downs, is quite good because you want to put a fade in, and you want to know that it's going to fit within this 60 seconds, because it's very important for library to fit exactly within 60, exactly within 30. If you're doing a 60, then maybe you can have your end point at say 57 or so and fade it, or sometimes you can. There's clever ways of doing it. You can put a couple of extra beats on at the beginning to make it that length, but it is required. It's another thing you do when you're writing actually your main song, is put little gaps in throughout, like 30, 60 or 130, and then it automatically makes your main bounce to useful for editors, so they can just go. They don't even need to go to the 60. Anyway, so that is done. So now what I'm going to do is and I know I've got everything selected. Good. This doesn't matter that that's selected. So I'm going now to my 60. I'm going to select. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm using the key command actually there to zoom in. Let's select it again. And I will just put a bar either side. That's like a bar there. Just to allow because I'm going to edit this after anyway, so I go bounce, and I'm going to do in the same format as the cut downs and the mains. So here we've got our stems have appeared here. So we want to do, this is going to be the 60, so I'm giving it the name. And I again, sequentially, the naming is 01 main, 02 underscore, 03 60, 04 30, 05 sting, 06 sting 2, sting, that would be sting 1, I guess. So now you see what it's called at 60. I mean, I would normally just type this in, and I'm going to do it. And this is obviously the process. This gets quicker because it's only 60 seconds that it's bouncing. The reason I leave the space earlier is because it's just in case there's a little something before. So we're going to the 30 again, and this is if you've done the work, it's a lot quicker. I'll give that about a bar. I mean, it can be any length actually. So I'm going to bounce that, the 30. That's good. Checking everything is there. This is all good. I mean, someone can probably tell me that I don't need to include the tempo information, but it's in there. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get it sent back. Okay. So this is the 30-second one. I would just simply go in and type 0430, which I can do. So there you go, 0430. So that means it's the fourth bounce, as it were, and it's the 30-second one. And that is bouncing away. And we're going on to the sting. And again, it's really useful to use this Alt command and the up arrow button to select. And there I go, either side. Particularly with the stings, as you've got the tail, it's a real... it's quite a hard one to get perfect. I don't even know if anyone has ever used a sting that I've created. I'm actually going to call this sting 1, just because I am particular like that. I don't know if anyone's ever used a sting that I've done. It's hard enough to know if people use your tracks when it's library. You just put it out there. and I stalk the internet to see what's getting used, and the stings don't come up. So this is sting 2, and I go, okay, that's good, and I could type it in, but I'm going to be lazy and just use the previous one that I've done. As I've bounced all these before. This is me just rebouncing them because I had an issue with the tail end. I was out walking today, listening to my mixes, and I thought that's not good enough. So there you go. So that is from Logic. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up. I'm going to try it in Wavelab. I can do it in Fission. I get Wavelab, or I could just bring it back into Logic. I'm still figuring out the best workflow. The thing about Wavelab is the fades are really good, but the fades are good in Logic as well. So I'm waiting, and I'll see if anyone has any suggestions. So well, everyone says at the end of these things, please subscribe. So go ahead, and hope you enjoyed.